Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first panel focused on understanding the changing unmanned landscape. I would first like to call our panelists on stage. We first have Mr. Hassan Al-Husani, CEO of Bayanat. Mr. Hassan is the CEO of Bayanat, spearheading the development of the company's expansion into the geospatial AI domain. Prior to joining Bayanat, Mr. Hassan was a key contributor to G42's strategic growth. He was a founding member of the Abu Dhabi Monitoring and Control Center, and he co-founded a startup delivering cutting-edge technology solutions to both the public and the private sectors. Welcome, Mr. Hassan. Our second panelist today is Professor Marwan Debba. Professor Marwan is chief researcher focusing on AI, telecommunication systems, and digital security at the Technology Innovation Institute. Professor Marwan is also an adjunct professor with the Department of Machine Learning at the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence and a full professor at Centrale Supélec in France. Prior to TII, Marwan was vice president of the Huawei Research Center in France and the director of the Alcatel-Lucent Chair on Flexible Radio in France. Welcome, Professor. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Tim Williams, Special Advisor, Naval and VUAV Systems at Airbus Helicopters. Tim is an advisor on operational issues for naval and VUAV platforms in Airbus Helicopters. Prior to that, he was the Director of Market Development for Naval Search and Rescue and VUAVs. Tim is a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. He spent 36 years in the Royal Navy as a helicopter pilot and a warfare officer. Welcome, Tim. Our fourth panelist today is Mr. Shaul Shahar. Mr. Shaul is an expert in aerospace and defense, specialized in unmanned and autonomous system and strategic management. He's a consultant and entrepreneur in defense and security domain. Shaul worked for 14 years in Israel Aerospace Industries and prior served 26 years in the IDF and retired at the rank of full colonel. Additionally, Shaul had held senior commanding officer positions at Imagery and Mapping Agency UAS Drone Squadron. Welcome, Shaul. Welcome to all. So the goal of the next 45 minutes is to discuss the unmanned landscape, which is undergoing a significant change driven by rapid demand, growth of suppliers, and variety of technological breakthroughs and systems being produced in multiple domains: the air, water, ground, and space. We have a great distinguished panel of domain experts and business leaders. You can also find their bios in your pockets besides my initial introduction. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being on our panel today. Just a few words to tee up this conversation and throwing a few quick thoughts before we delve into our questions. Unmanned systems have become essential to most aspects of defense, military, intelligence, and security operations. As a result, all such communities are pivoting to adapt to the nascent unmanned revolution and the still evolving unmanned landscape. There are two aspects here. One, we have the use case perspective, where global demand for unmanned systems is now rooted in the understanding that unmanned systems, especially autonomous systems, are crucial to dealing with an emerging operating environment that will stress multiple use cases across multiple domains. We heard about surveillance, multi-mission flexibility, human-machine teaming, the ability to operate in contested environments, integration of AI and machine learning, and a need for faster decision-making. On the other side, technological breakthroughs are also playing a vital role in the changing unmanned landscape. Autonomy, machine learning, platforms and payloads, sensor fusion, energy capture and storage for platform endurance, propulsion technologies, amongst others, are adding to the value of unmanned systems and expanding the missions they can carry out. This panel will consider trends in unmanned systems demand and discuss the parameters of the new unmanned systems landscape. We will focus on what has changed, what is still changing, and what changes are likely to take place. Without further ado, my first question will be to Tim, in particular on what types of unmanned capabilities are different defense and security communities most interested in procuring. And my second part of the question, Tim, would be, from those systems that the communities are looking for, what are the ultimate values that these systems are likely to deliver and expected to deliver?
Hi, thank you. I thought about this problem largely from the perspective of the user. My background, as you heard before, is naval, and so I will start with that one. I think there's a fundamental point to remember, though, before we start, and that is that while drones will affect the way we conduct operations up to a point, the aims of those operations and what we're trying to achieve has not changed and will not change in major operations. And so another point is for me that I'm looking particularly at VTOL, virtual takeoff and landing systems, because that's where I specialize in particular. In the naval area, we've been a bit behind the land area because we're naturally more conservative community. We've seen on land, and there have been operations, obviously, in recent years where drones have come to the fore, but they're largely on the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance area. People have realized that there are other ways of using them, that is the achieving effects and attack and things, and that's coming through as well. So while talking about the areas of use, we're looking at the ISR and ISTAR is key, but in the naval domain, to start with that, we've got anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare, anti-air warfare. And we will see drones coming into those areas as technology develops. And I think the pace will be regulated by the acceptability and effectiveness in the perhaps simpler areas first, or the ones which people can see as being easier to introduce. Bear in mind that in the military sense, we are very, very conservative. We want things that work, that are effective, achieve the aim, and we will take them, the ones where we can be most effective. And they've got to be cost effective too. So I think we're going to see, on the naval sense, those areas, probably in that order I mentioned, anti-submarine, anti-surface, and air defense. On land, I think the capabilities, we've seen ISR, we've seen the delivery of weaponry, but as we get AI that's more effective and more reliable and more trustworthy, then we will see the standard missions of armed reconnaissance, where it's a particularly dangerous mission, but beyond visual line of sight normally. And that requires AI to complete the mission safely and effectively. Onto that to the attack, where you're going to have swarms, large groups of aircraft supporting the manned controller. And that requires a whole breadth of technology to make it work. I think in public service area, surveillance is going to be key for police forces, for border forces, economic zones at sea. That requires coordinated response, persistence, replacement of drones, and a whole range of technologies there. In addition, sort of aerial work, firefighting, medical, and so on. So I think, just to sort of finish my first comments really, I think the value and enhanced value they deliver is, as were made in the opening remarks, the safety of our personnel, the persistence to do it constantly, keep the effect going all the time, and it has to be cost effective. Now, the second part, what was your second question again?
So the second question, I guess you answered it. It's more about the value that you expect to be delivered from your
the value,
systems.
Sorry. Well, there we have it. I think it will come. It's more a question of the pace at which it happens, which is acceptable to regulators, the public, and the users. There we go.
Thank you. So we heard ISR across domains. We heard about air surface warfare, coordinated response, search and rescue, with effectiveness, trust, and safety being key requirements. So, Mr. Hassan, following Tim's answer and also knowing the trends that are driving the demand in the military, are these trends similar in the security and law enforcement sectors? And in that specific sector, what would be the main convergences and divergences that you see in both the demand requirements and supply?
Sure. As His Excellency Al-Alama mentioned in his opening speech, AI and unmanned systems are continuing to reshape our world. So from military to national security to law enforcement, transportation, all the way to our day-to-day activities. The growth in demand for such systems and products continues to, or is seen across all sectors of these industries. When it comes, and it's also worth mentioning that it is often seen that as technology evolves in the military sector, it always finds its way to transition into the civilian business world. So when it comes to law enforcement and security, the convergence will be in the areas of cost optimization and operational efficiency, while the divergence will be in the ConOps and the use cases. So for instance, when we talk about unmanned aerial systems, the emphasis from the military perspective, as Tom mentioned, is the ISR and ISTAR. So it requires speed, it requires different or multiple payloads, and it also requires endurance. While from the security and law enforcement sector, it tends to, it moves towards a different angle where lower altitude, lighter units are more on demand. So in order to serve a real-time or near real-time data stream that then is fed to our AI ecosystem. So in general, or as example, in Bayanat, and since the acquisition of Bayanat by the G42, we've actually focused on using the unmanned systems in multiple domains. So we use the aerial unmanned systems for our aerial surveying. We use the USVs for hydro surveying, and we've launched our autonomous vehicle, the robotaxi, last November, using the autonomous vehicles as well, or the autonomous system. We today provide services and capabilities for the environmental agency with precision agriculture. We provide inspection capabilities for the municipalities and the construction business. And we also provide multiple other use cases for the civilian domain.
Thank you. So I guess moving along the same line of the technology evolution and the adaptability and the modularity of this technology to be adapted in the civilian space and the commercial domain, I'd like to ask Shaul about the trends of using commercial autonomous systems in the multiple domains that Mr. Hassan mentioned, whether in the air, on sea, underwater, ground, space.
Okay, thank you. Before answering regarding the trend, I would like to speak about the differences that we have and what is similar, what is different between the defense and the law enforcement market and the commercial market. And as we know, the defense market has evolved very quickly and very nicely, and today you cannot have or to act without it. In the commercial market, we don't see it yet. So we need to understand why it happened. So we need to speak about the aspect, okay? And there is a lot of aspect, but I will try to touch the main one. The one is the motivation, okay? And the motivation is important because it's like what you want to achieve, okay? And why you are going for that. And I can tell you that something regarding the unmanned capability, when we start, it was like to replace exist mission, okay? To do it maybe better with more capabilities. I think that the way that we need to look at it, okay? What we can do that we don't do today. And this is also something in the commercial. It's not only to replace things that we are doing, because the value, the real value, is in the mission that we didn't conduct. I will take example from the defense that with unique characteristic that we have from a UAV, it's like the endurance time, that you can be there up to 48 hours. Before that, regular airplane, maybe they can come to 4, 5, 10 hours. So with 48 hours, you can do things that we didn't do in the past. Technology that is matter, missions that we want to conduct. Main one, regulation. Regulation, it's not like that we don't have regulation in the defense. We have. But when we come to regulation to the commercial market, we will see it. It's a different league, okay, of problem, okay? Mainly coming from the safety, airworthiness, we speak about air, and the same problem on the ground, maybe higher, if we speak about the autonomous car that I will touch in a minute. So I think that because of that, if we take all this one, there is a lot of similarities, but there are differences. And let's touch the differences about two aspects. One is the regulation, and the other one is risk. Start with the risk, okay? When we were controlling it through the defense and the law enforcement, okay, it was less closed system, and we kept it very carefully, okay? Not everybody can touch this system or to have this system. When we are going commercially, and now everyone can buy any platform in no money everywhere, and this is one of the biggest problems. This is a risk that comes with the commercial side, with all the advantage, but this is a risk that we need to take on. So this is regarding the risk. Let's speak about regulation. The regulation, I think it was the reason that the commercial market didn't develop or evolve like the defense market. And because of that, you can see that up to now in the commercial market, we're only using the mini UAV, quadcopters, and if you know 107 Act from the FAA in the United States, you need to be in, you cannot fly beyond the visual line of sight. It's specific altitude, and you need to control it on the time. Very strict regulation. So we need to solve it, and the technology that we need, if we speak about the future, we need to see what kind of technologies can solve this problem and give us the chance to go ahead also in the commercial market. I will start with, I think that the first, and we need to think big. When we speak about trend, future trend, we need to think big. And when we think big, let's start with the airliner, passenger and cargo, okay? In this one, as you know, the pilot is the biggest problem, okay? Availability and cost. Yes, you can find it is between 20 to 25% of the cost of any airliner. So you can ask yourself, why still we have 4 pilots, it's double crew, that we have on long-haul flight? And here you can say, oh, regulation won't give you to reduce the number of pilots that we have, because think about it number, 100,000 flights a day, okay? If we only, let's say that 50% of it is the long haul. If we take only 1 pilot off, think about what we can achieve. And here, regarding the regulation, okay, on safety of the passenger that you have, cargo, you don't have the safety of the passenger, but you have the risk of crashing on populated areas, okay? It's not like in the defense, they are flying mainly in open area and no risk to those that are on the ground. So here, you speak about the way that we can take, not to remotely control and to take out all the pilot, in only to do 2 instead 4, and the redundancy and the backup from the safety issue of the regulation will be from a ground control station or room control station that have pilot in there, but they can control and monitor many flights in the air. So it will give the backup, okay? That no, it's like you don't have anyone on the plane. And this is something that will happen. I know that it's a lot of debate regarding it, but it will happen. 5 to 7 years, we will see it in most of the companies, and there are companies that work on it. Second one is the cargo. The cargo, maybe it will take between 7 to 10 years. But the cargo, there is no risk for the passenger because there is no passenger. And cargo, it's okay. The cargo, the roadmap is to come to a situation that it's big plan, that here we are not going to plan and build the plan itself because we are going to unmanned the big one. To take an aircraft, fly-by-wire aeroplane, and to man it, okay? To bring the capabilities, it's very easy to do it, and it will be a fully remotely controlled aircraft, okay? 7400 that can do the cargo mission, and it will be there, and it will be able also to fly in the national airspace, and also in category A, dense airport, as you know from this safety regulation. So this is regarding the airline that I think is very important. The second thing that we have, it's the UAM. The UAM, urban air mobility, that we know that a lot of companies working about it, but I don't want to speak about the first stage. The first stage will be with pilot, okay? It like will be a taxi that fly in the air and not on the ground. But this is not what I mean. I want to see this UAM without pilot, flying from point to point, okay, do it by air, and they will be fully remotely controlled. I want to say something regarding regulation. In Europe, 6 years ago, when they dealt with the regulation about the UAV, you know that they changed the name. There is no UAV. They changed it to RAPS, remotely pilot aircraft system, because they said no way that we don't have pilot in the loop. It can be on the platform, it can be on the ground or elsewhere, but we have pilot in the loop. This is why the communication technology is this so important, and also the advancement that we'll need in it, because at the end, all these unmanned capabilities, if you want to be remotely controlled, you need to have this communication stuff. So this UAM will be there. I want to speak also about capability of HAPS, okay, that it's like to take our capabilities forward. It's high altitude pseudo-satellite. You know that up now we came to 45K feet with our unmanned capabilities, and we didn't get to 25 kilometers, and we can endure up to 48 hours. This HAPS can reach 70K feet above all the airline restriction and everything, and to be there between 6 to 12 months. You take off, you don't land. After 1 year, maybe you remember that you need to take it back and maybe to go with the second one. And this is mainly for communication, pointed communication. You don't need to cover the whole world. Let's say Abu Dhabi, 2 to 3 HAPS, it's enough to give you internet and broadband, internet and everything to have it here. And it's also, we can solve maybe the internet rural area problem that we have in the world. From the ground perspective, I want to touch about two. The one, autonomous car. Everybody nowadays speak about autonomous car, and I can tell you what is technology is not the showstopper of this. Again, the showstopper is regulation. But you cannot say only regulation. We need to help the regulators, okay, to get the decision that will let us to use these capabilities, but with technologies and safety system. I can take only 1 minute, because I don't know about the time, about the autonomous car. I don't know if today's system like Mobileye, okay, from Intel, okay, usually use the V's, okay, EO and IR. Okay, they didn't reach the IR, but let's say that it's doable. I can tell you that it won't be enough. Nowadays, they are calling for a LiDAR sensing system, and they are calling for a radar, okay? And one of the challenges that we have here, because LiDAR and radar are not new in the market, but up to now, they cost $50,000, okay, and they weigh 5 kilos, something like that, and it's not something that you can put on each car, taxi, or a logistic truck. And the way that I see it, and it will happen, because nowadays there are a lot of companies that came with a very cheap LiDAR, with very good performance, and also with radar. And at the end, if you come to the regulator, and you tell him that from the sensing point of view of a car, okay, it's like 100 times better than the man that is sitting there, and you don't know if he is feeling good, drink alcohol or not, because all these systems are free of all that. And also here we call motion, no motion for this system. So they will say viz, leader, radar, and it will give you like the safety that you can be there, okay, and to use this. We will see it 3 to 5 years, taxis, logistic. The main issue is private autonomous driving. Do we came to the point that each one of us, okay, will come to his vehicle and you say, good morning, go to my workplace, okay? So this is something that from technology, no problem, no issue, because it's the same technology that we are using. Here it's coming to a money availability, and we need to low cost. In the commercial, this is something that's very dramatic. Low cost solution, okay? And it's not easy because we call for more system, more technology. From the other hand, we want it to be achievable for many people because the economy of scale, it will be the main point that if we bring these capabilities in.
Thank you. So we heard regulation, standards, safety, endurance, cost efficiencies as key enablers to this adoption, and Shaul mentioned the point on technology. So to jump into the technology front, both from an algorithmic perspective, software, hardware, Marwan, what technologies do you think are most important to unlock the value and the utility in unmanned systems across the industries that we mentioned before, and what are the risks associated with them?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. So here I see two trends. First, of course, is what has been mentioned many times here, is AI. And the other is what we will call 5G-like technologies, 5G-like in the sense of 5G and beyond. On the AI part, of course, basically, I think what we're seeing today is of course, the ubiquitous use of AI. So AI is not completely new for military. I mean, if you go back to ancient times, if you wanted to do a ballistic kick, and this is a very good example, then you would use what we call a data-driven approach if you didn't know Newton. What I mean by that is that you would create a database where you would have the angle of your kick and basically also the distance of your kick. And next time you're asked to kick at a given distance, you look at the table and see if you had that basically number inside. That's data mining. It's not new. It's been there for years. Where we start talking about intelligence and human have been using it is when the distance is not there. Then you do some kind of interpolation, okay, regression, and basically you can find immediately the distance. And what's new today is, of course, the speed at which we can do that and the easiness at which we can do that of those data-driven approaches has increased basically its usability everywhere. Another thing also is that those data-driven approaches in ancient times, which were very specific to some cases, meaning you were training with data which were in a sunny environment, and when you had an attack, your soldiers had to kick in a windy environment, that they could still interpolate and find a way to do it. This is also something that techniques today have been able to do with techniques called transfer learning. What we don't know today how to do is, of course, we're in a completely new environment, like kicking on the moon when you learn on Earth. And this is basically a trend on the fastness and the software and also the frameworks on which we're building. The second thing also in AI that I think is very important is the capability that we're seeing to port AI directly on the edge. And today, the majority of the AI capability that we're using is mostly on the cloud. And we know that when you're sending drones, things like that, you cannot bring the data back and take a decision. So you need to port it on the edge. And I think it was also mentioned by His Excellency, the fact that we're also having chipsets which are low cost, on which we can port that directly on the edge with what we call on-device AI with various companies. Providing that is also a big game changer in how we're doing basically the kind of edge AI, edge computing directly, and which of course solves the questions of privacy, the questions of coverage, the questions of basically also latency, which is a big issue. The second big trend I'm seeing also is, of course, what I call 5G-like technologies. 5G in the sense of not necessarily using 5G to build that, but basically what we call the three aspects of 5G, which is the broadband, the ultra-reliable low-latency communication. Latency is a big game changer for 5G, but also in our all business. So latency has nothing to do with the speed. It's mainly if you ping, how fast you have this reaction. And we know that when we take a decision, the 1 millisecond or up to 1 millisecond decision is very complicated to do. And 5G, for example, is achieving that. Just to give you an example, if you have a car running at 100 kilometer, if you have, for example, a 4G network, which is roughly 15 millisecond latency, by the time you have a decision to brake, you're on with 3 meter in terms of distance. On a 5G, you're at the level of a centimeter. So it's extremely fast, and we know that drones are going at a very fast rate. More than 100 kilometers an hour, and this is very important for us. And the third one is also the massive connectivity that we're having, which is a lot of sensors which are embedded in all those devices, and for which basically you need to port those connections. Now, what we're seeing also is the advancements in what I call 5G or 5G like beyond, is the sensing capability. One of the big game changer which is happening today in technologies is the fact that we're using higher and higher frequencies in terms of communication, millimeter wave, terahertz communication. And if you did a bit of physics, what happens is that the resolution with which you can see your environment is roughly inversely proportional to the frequency. So basically, a frequency tells you basically if you have a high frequency, you can distinguish object with a certain level, and that level is exactly the resolution, which is called what we call the wavelength. And what matters here is that by going higher in frequencies, we're changing the paradigm of communication, where instead of sending bits, we're seeing a lot of communication devices, which mentioned LiDARs, are becoming radars. And this is a huge business which is happening on beyond 5G and 6G, and what I called here 5G-like, which will also create the capability of having machines which are able to sense their environment and move. And as you know, you've been working on that. Localization, for example, is a big issue, and having extremely good localization is all with these sensing capabilities that are going to be poured in by the fact that we're using higher frequencies.
Thank you, Marwan. Just a follow-up question. You mentioned basically a data-driven approach and training of AI, putting it probably on GPUs on the edge, enabling inference on the edge and decision-making, and fast connectivity using 5G and beyond. A point here that gets raised is what is the impact on the security of the system itself and the AI models on the machine? So more from a risk perspective and security risk perspective, how do you see that?
So that's also a big question. It was also mentioned during the speech of his minister, is all about explaining the decisions that are taken. And today, of course, the majority of the way we deal with AI is through a black box approach. And a black box approach means what it means. It means we don't want to understand, and we don't want to understand not because we really don't want, is that we have an incapability of opening it. However, we find use cases which work, and we want to go, and this is the only way. If I go back to the example I gave previously, is in ancient times, many countries did not know about Newton, and you needed to defend your country. So you would use the data-driven approaches to approach that. So in terms of risk, of course, what we're seeing is that we're having more and more, I would say, systems which are trained on certain configurations, and whenever we play with them in the real case, they are in other configurations. A very example is cameras. I mean, many companies have had these issues where they train cameras in terms of image identification recognitions, and they build it, for example, in China, where basically you have cameras which can identify very good profiles of Chinese, and then you sell them in Africa, and then you have a problem because the training was not done. So the devices here, one of the risks is that, of course, we're not able to consider all the different configurations where the system was trained, and whenever there's a new configuration which happens because we are going on the field, then we have a big risk of the system failing or taking a wrong decision around that. So I think that's a very important thing. Second is all about the communication, because even though we're talking about AI, of course, the jamming around all those communication systems can change all the configuration we have. The third one is also we're seeing a lot of people hacking AI systems by itself.
Yes.
So they're hacking basically, of course, systems, but they're hacking the AI by itself. And it changes totally the way we have designed the system and also on the training. And I think that's one of the biggest risks we're seeing today, is doing more research on basically AI security, but also securing the AI by itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Marwan. Hassan, I would like to also direct the same question to you as the CEO of a data-driven company today. So what is the importance of data analytics, of AI in general, and other technologies in the uptake and adoption of the unmanned systems?
Definitely. Of course, I could go with what Marwan mentioned, but of course, as we gradually progress from ANI, which is artificial narrow intelligence, towards AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, the capabilities when it comes to artificial intelligence, the expansion of such capabilities will affect or impact both principles, operational and security as well. So it's a combination between the two. For any team to work properly, it's the human and machine interaction. Reliability has to be there. The trust has to be there. Any perfect sports team today, the teamwork or the trust is the key factor that builds that teamwork. So reliability is a key factor. So it's building new capabilities while actually securing the data feeds and the data algorithms that we're building up. So it's always the balance between the two factors. In some aspects, it might cause delay in progression, but in other aspects, it will impact or build up on the reliance and the reliability of the system. So it's always the balance between the two.
Great, thank you. You mentioned HMI, which is actually one of the, I would like to expand it a bit more into the concept of human augmentation in my next question. And maybe this is a question to start with Shaul. How do you see the human augmentation, human-machine interaction, human brain-to-machine interfaces today benefiting industries like defense and military?
Okay, but before that, before I will answer you, I
Yes.
want my distinguished colleagues here spoke about the AI. I want to say something, and maybe something has been changed in the last 2 years, okay? Also, the AI is developing all the time. And until now, I'm speaking now about the defense, because in the commercial we don't have so much. In the defense system, there is no yet AI capabilities in the way that we want to see. I can tell you that most of the company and the system of UAVs that are working up to now, most of them, because in the defense we are very conservative. So we don't bring new technologies and change systems that are there. So most of the systems that are deployed today, nothing to do with AI. Don't mix it with computer vision. Computer vision, yes, because it's a software things that we have done, like change diction, moving target indication, things like that, that we are going to do it the same with AI, more efficiently, more quickly for a more quick decision maker, but nothing to do. And I think that one of the big advancements that we will see is when AI will really, be integrated in this system, and we will start to see the value of it in our system. So this is something regarding the AI, and it's a crucial technology. Okay, I will give you an example from, as you know, we come from the intelligence, we collect data like crazy. Okay, from satellite, from air photography, from UAVs. I can tell you that up to now, maybe you look, because of lack of manpower and lack of AI capabilities, and computing power and things like that, maybe we see 5% or 10% from all this material, And I think when you speak about data, how and to replace all the analysts, think about the AI that can do all this change detection, ATR that we all the time wanted to do, and it's a machine, and it can do it very efficiently, and you can touch the whole things that you are collecting. This is a huge achievement. You can collect less, or collect more, and to analyze it all. Regarding the human augmentation, this is something that is very important, and I think that I spoke about reducing the workload. This is what I said today. We don't have enough analysts. We don't have enough people, to deal with this collecting data, mainly that we need to do the data fusion and all this. So I think that AI, with the interface with the human augmentation that we are speaking and the involvement between them, this is one of the things that we can see the real benefit of bringing this in. You can go forward. I don't want to call it science fiction, but we can speak about something else. Today, I know that, and I'm not an expert for technology. I'm coming from the practice. I'm expert to how we use this kind of system and technologies. So we all know about the mirroring robot, I think that it was in the news 1 week ago. We saw Jeff Bezos, working with his hand, and doing things that a robot that are, let's say, In the news, it was 1 meter, but think about it, it can be 1,000 kilometers because of communication, no problem today. So, and you can do a very gentle, okay, movement. It's like, let's say that you want to defuse a bomb. So today, you risk your people, or you take this small robot to do it. But with this kind of technology, okay, in very dangerous places, this is one of the unmanned, the famous D, so you can do it now very nicely and to do it remotely. So this is not science fiction. It will happen and we will have it. But think about that now, that you want to mirror a soldier. Because if you can do whatever you want with this mirroring technology, so maybe you can sit in a room, okay? And mirroring as a soldier, and the soldier will be in the battlefield, and he will be the one that doing all the movement, shooting, whatever you want, instead of you. You are in a safe place, and he is there. So this is something that maybe we can ask science fiction, maybe, but I think that between the gentle things that you can do and up to mirroring soldier in the field, so there is, a gap. So I think that reducing work hall, okay, this is something that's very important because we have problem of qualification and keeping currency. And as you know, people that are coming to, in some of the countries, you have it for 2 years, 3 years, okay, because you don't have people, and you need to train it, and you train and train. It's like an industry, okay? So we need to train less. The AI will help here because autonomous capability will do more, okay, with AI. Making decision will be, maybe the main things will be the taking decision that we will not give the machine to do it by themselves because they can take, like this thing which Gus said, that they can be wrong. And this is, okay, this is the human that we need. All the other tasks, try to do it with machine. Machine is better than everybody else. I want to end with one example. Takeoff and landing. You are coming from the VTOL. I want to come from the regular, okay, takeoff and landing on a runway. This was when we start with the UAV, it's the dangerous part of a flight, okay? When you are cruising, less problematic. In the air, less obstacle. Takeoff and landing, this is the one that you crash your plane, UAV, and I saw many crashes in my house. The dream of us was to take out, we call it external pilot, to take it out from the loop and to do it automatically. I can tell you that for the last 20 years, okay, it's done automatically, and we are doing like thousands of takeoff and landing, and you do it, okay, without any error. There was a curve, okay, when we learn the system and we bring it close to 100% proof. But think about external pilot if it's a man. Mood, motion, maybe he fight with his wife before he came to work, okay? So, and you need to train different people, and each one of them can do a mistake. The machine is one, you don't change it until you come to the curve, and each is doing it day by day, time by time. So this is the beauty of this robot and capabilities.
Okay, thank you. Marwan, on the same question, just quickly to address human augmentation and the importance of this human-to-machine interface and the impact or the effect that we said on trust before and on the adoption of unmanned systems.
Okay, so that's a lot of questions for a small answer. So first of all, human augmentation, I think, things are progressing. My glasses are already human augmentation, by the way. I'm augmented in some sense because I'm seeing better. The same thing with ears. For sure, I think we're going to see an evolution of more and more implication and usage of human augmentation for soldiers, because of course it increases the performance, increases the attention of soldiers and stuff like that. So I think this is going to be embedded in all the things that we're seeing. The question now is, of course, the use of more sophisticated things like AI embedded in those human augmentation and how they fit with human. I think this is the big challenge we're having. We've been seeing machines working together, humans working together, and the interactions between both is still not easy to see how things are going to be happening, either from ethics, from law perspective, but also from a technological perspective in terms of what are the kinds of interactions we can do. And I think this is the big trend that people are trying to work on at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tim, another technology that today also seems like sci-fi is swarms and multi-drone coordination and multi-drone based missions. what is the timeline that you see that such technology will be available at scale and adapted at scale, both in the region and globally?
Yeah, interesting one. Swarms, a lot of discussion about swarms. And I think a lot of these points made about AI and acceptability, regulation, and so on, are all extremely relevant to that. Depends really what you mean by a swarm. I think swarm really means a group of independent, unmanned or unmanned vehicles who act together but autonomously. And therefore they compensate when things change, when one moves and so on. There's a degree of intelligence in there which doesn't exist today. And you hear about swarms. I mean, for example, the Olympics, the original Olympics, Summer Olympics in Beijing, you saw swarms of drones doing light shows and various things. Those were not swarms in that sense. Those were controlled drones following the instructions they'd been given. They weren't independent. And there's a big difference between that and the swarm. It's coming without question because we need it to happen. We are trying to replace the human and with all the flexibility and versatility in your brain into the drone, in my case, the aircraft, but similarly land vehicles, ships and subsurface vehicles. And there's a whole range of activity there, which it comes back down again to the effect you need, the cost effectiveness, and the acceptability of that technology to achieve your effect. I mentioned, I thought really about, earlier I mentioned about beyond visual line of sight, and we talked about HAPS and things a moment ago. If you wish to do many missions where there is a controller, a commander, not a controller. The control is the AI in the swarm dealing with each individual aircraft. The commander is the guy telling it to forget that target, go to that one, or change a mission or something, and that's the commander. If you've got to have that kind of command, which I think you will probably all agree you do have to have that command, that's the human in the loop in there somewhere. So you've got independent AI working out in the field, whether it's agriculture, military, or whatever, but somebody's got to be in charge. You've got to talk to it. We talked about HAPS and the communication with that. We're similarly working on a system which has got many weeks up in the air already. Targets are the same. They're coming, different solutions. And we have a concept, for example, for a group of naval drones capable of the same kind of activities which helicopters do, where you compensate for the bulk and size of the helicopter and the crew with multiple drones. The concept is that will become a swarm with intelligence in there, and it will be controlled through the HAPS by a ship, an aircraft, land, and as you said before, thousands of miles away, whatever. That is coming. Now, the time scale you mentioned for all of this.
I'm sorry, just we only have like few seconds left, so
10 years.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. All right. So with this, we come at the end of our panel. I would like to thank, and I would like you to join me in thanking our distinguished panel, our distinguished panelists. We spoke about regulations, standards, technology, swarms, timelines, human-machine augmentation. I hope that we gave you insights for the changing unmanned landscape. Thank you very much.